Good day, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin today in Australia, where a hostage situation has ended in a downtown Sydney cafe. At least 2 people have been killed at the Lent Chocolate Cafe, and several others have been wounded. The lone gunman responsible for the siege allegedly requested to speak with Prime Minister Tony Abbott and local media. He also requested an ISIS flag. Several Australian jihadists have been fighting in Syria alongside the ISIS terrorist group and have threatened the U.S. and its allies. Meanwhile, in Belgium, where a man has taken a hostage in the city of Ghent, several people were arrested after 30 police officers raided the area. The situation is now under control. According to the authorities, the incident was unrelated to the hostage situation in Australia or to Islamist extremism. And to Latin America now, where the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our Americas Summit has closed. It closes in Havana, Cuba, Sunday. The summit marked ALBA's 10-year anniversary. A final declaration was released at the end of the gathering condemning U.S. sanctions against Venezuela and demanding an end to the economic blockade against Cuba. The countries also backed non-member Argentina in its struggle against the vulture funds. The Caribbean nations of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Grenada were formally accepted as new members of the 11-country bloc. We now go to Mexico, where on Sunday, the independent magazine Proceso released new evidence that ties federal forces to the abduction of the 43 students from the state of Guerrero. The magazine points to a series of videos which contradict the official version of events. Officials claim that only local police and drug lords were responsible for the kidnapping. Allegedly recorded by the missing students, the videos show that one of the abducted students has already been killed. Parents of the youth claim that the remaining 42 are being moved from place to place by federal authorities or by the armed gang Guerreros Unidos. And also in Mexico, federal police violently cracked down on a number of protesters in the state of Guerrero during demonstrations demanding justice for the missing students. A concert was set to take place in solidarity with the relatives of the students, but was canceled following the violence. The rock band Panteon Rococó claims that drunken pro-government men attacked the crowds so that law enforcement could intervene. For more now on police repression of protesters in Mexico, we go to our correspondent Clayton Kahn.
Yesterday morning, Mexican Federal Police clashed with students of the Ayotzinapa Teachers Training College, as well as with parents of the disappeared 42 students and members of the Guerrero State Teachers Union in the city of Chilpancingo, as students were preparing to install a stage for a large concert later that day in solidarity with Ayotzinapa. The clash left 22 injured, with several being taken to the hospital for serious injuries. According to a statement by the Tlachinon Human Rights Center, several plainclothes police in a state of inebriation confronted the students and began aggressions. Later, more riot police arrived, as well as members of the teachers union to support the families and students. Now, the rights defenders of Tlachinon, as well as student leaders from Ayotzinapa, called the violence and aggression an attempt to intimidate and quiet their voices, with now more than 2.5 months since 43 students were forcibly disappeared by police in Iguala Guerrero, with the whereabouts of 42 still unknown. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur here in Mexico City.
Monday, Venezuelans are commemorating the 15-year anniversary of the approval of the country's Bolivarian Constitution. Marches have been organized to celebrate the Constitution, which was ratified in 1999 by a popular referendum. President Nicolas Maduro announced that he will pass an executive decree to declare the day a national holiday. One of the most progressive in the world, the Bolivarian Constitution was former President Hugo Chávez's first major project after being sworn in for his first presidential term in February of 1999. In neighboring Colombia, a new victims delegation will be assembled for the peace talks being held in Havana, Cuba, A dozen new victim delegates will join previous representatives to discuss reparations with the government and the FARC guerrillas. The final meeting with the victims is set for Tuesday. The FARC and the government have already agreed on 3 of the 5 points on the peace talks agenda. Victims' reparation could become the 4th agreement, thereby paving the way for a final peace agreement. And we now go to Peru, where the 2-week COP20 climate change summit came to an end on Sunday with minimal agreements. Environmental organizations have criticized the final text of the summit, which they say is too weak on climate change and only provides a minimal framework for a new document to replace the Kyoto Protocol. The countries which participated in the summit agreed to limit the increase in global temperature to between 1.5 and 2 degrees, but the countries failed to reach a clear commitment on how to achieve that reduction. In world news, we go to the Middle East and Syria, where the government of Bashar al-Assad has made notable advances in the nation's civil war. The government recovered key positions in the area north of Aleppo, Syria's second largest city. The government was able to recover areas which serve as a supply corridor for the different factions fighting over the city. The United Nations envoy to Syria is trying to broker a ceasefire in Aleppo in order to allow the entrance of much-needed humanitarian aid. The city is being disputed by the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, the Western-backed Free Syrian Army, and government forces. We end today in Ukraine, where a new human rights report by the United Nations was released on Monday. The report reveals how Ukrainian government volunteer brigades have regularly committed human rights violations. The volunteer brigades are organized by the Interior Ministry and have been criticized for incorporating far-right groups and operating as a paramilitary force. The report also puts the number of those who have died in the 8-month conflict at 4,700. As always, more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.